All right, joining me now. Very excited to have her first time with me here on SI Media with Jimmy. Traina, long overdue. Whenever I ask people who I should have on, her name is always at the top of the list from ESPN and many other things. Mina Kimes. Mina, how's it going?
It's good. Yeah, I'm excited to join the podcast.
As I said, whenever maybe 2 or 3 times a year, I'll throw it out there like, who should I have on? Because sometimes my brain doesn't work in terms of booking, and your name is always at the top. So I figured with the season starting, I didn't want to do it over the summer. I figured now that we have some interesting story. It's crazy. 2 weeks in, I feel like there's 20 storylines already in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it is the greatest show on earth, and every week there's new, surprising outcomes, I
Yeah.
would say, too, which is cool. I think that's what makes the sport so great. Is
Yeah.
like you come in with the favorites, and some of them look great, but some of them don't, and there's always surprising teams.
Absolutely. We'll get into a lot of it. I wanted to start with you for a little bit because it is your first time on. I'm sure every time you do a podcast for the first time, people are like, how'd you get started? How'd you get started? And I hate that question. But given that you're not an ex player and you're an NFL analyst, you're kind of unique in that sense. And, we know that was a topic actually recently, but I saw on your Wikipedia page, it said that ESPN hired you off of a Tumblr post that you wrote. Is that accurate? And what if it is? What a wild way to get to the worldwide leader.
I would say it's partially accurate. So I was hired at ESPN as a senior writer for the magazine, and I was a senior writer for other magazines before then. I was a business journalist at Fortune magazine. Then I moved to Bloomberg, where I joined the investigative team and wrote for Business Week. So I was a features writer. And in some ways, it was going from being a features writer to being a features writer. But the main difference, of course, was that I was being hired to write about sports and not business. And the editors at ESPN, the magazine, Megan Greenwell, Scott Burton, got the idea that I might be interested in writing about sports instead of being an investigative reporter from a personal essay that I posted about football on Tumblr. So I think it kind of maybe was the catalyst in some ways, but the job that I was doing was actually pretty similar. I was a magazine writer.
Right. So when you get to ESPN and you're a senior writer there, and now it's going to be it's sports for you. Was it always going to be NFL? Did you have to talk with higher ups about making the NFL your main beat? Were there other sports in the mix, or was it always going to be NFL for you?
I always wrote about other sports for the magazine. I did a number of NFL profiles, but I also profiled guys in other sports. I think one I did a story on Luka Doncic when he was 19. That was one of the last stories I did for the magazine. I went to Korea to write about Korean baseball. I wrote about esports. I did investigative stories. So I did that kind of everything as a writer. And then before I became an NFL analyst, which is my current title, I was opinionating on shows like Around the Horn, Highly Questionable, about a variety of sports. So it actually took, I think, maybe 5 or 6 years for me to pivot to shifting entirely on football, which is, of course, what I do now.
Great career move. There's no better sport to be affiliated with. If
Truly,
you
right?
aren't doing NFL, what would have been the second choice for you?
I think I would just be writing about a wide variety of things
Yeah.
because, yeah, I mean, going from being a writer to an analyst was a far bigger job leap than going from business journalism to sports journalism, pardon me, because it's just
That's
an
interesting.
entirely different job.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Wait, just to get back to the beginning, I should have asked this before with the Tumblr thing. So it was ESPN coming to, like, you didn't apply for a job or send a resume. The
Mhm.
ESPN came to you.
Yeah, they approached me. I posted on Tumblr, but Slate reposted it, so it kind of, I think, made the
Yeah.
rounds because of that. And yeah, they reached out to me, and it was never something that I thought I would pursue. I thought I would be
Right.
a business journalist forever, I guess, or at least some kind of profiles writer. I never thought of myself as a sports writer growing up.
Do you ever have even one day where you miss being a business writer?
Sometimes I think I miss the impact of being an investigative reporter. It was very fulfilling, right? And
Mhm.
obviously, I mean, there certainly is no absence of need for investigative stories right now. And I see some of the great work. A lot of my former colleagues, pardon me, work at ProPublica, and I'm in awe of some of the work that they do. But also, I have such a dream job right now. It is pretty hard to
Yeah.
not want
Yeah.
to do this.
So then it becomes NFL. You said it took 5 or 6 years for the pivot to be a full time NFL analyst.
Yeah.
Um, and anyone who follows you knows your work. I mean, to say you are really hardcore with what you do would be an understatement. And I know it's a lot of the analytic stuff. Was it? I mean, I still struggle understanding the analytic stuff a lot. Was that easy for you to get into? Were you excited to get into that? Is it just something you figure, it's the way you watch sports? Tell me about, because, there's analytics versus eye test. I'm curious about being so analytical driven.
Yeah, I think what makes our show NFL Live special is that we marry both. I've learned so much about studying film and identifying what's going on in the field from the former players that I work with. And I like to think that um, some of the data that I brought to the table, some of the analytical thinking that frankly is really now just commonplace around the league, is something that they've learned from as well. And I think the best segments on our show are when the two combine. I mean, I'm constantly texting with Dan Orlovsky and Ryan Clark, I mean, all of them. But hey, did you notice this trend? Oh, yeah, I've got like 20 plays that show this. Oh, cool. Let's do a segment where we talk about those things coming together. I think that's when the best television that we do happens, quite frankly. But for me, I think one of the things I love so much about covering football is like you just never stop learning. And if you aren't, then you're not doing it right because it's something that's happening with teams. I mean,
Right.
teams now think so different about the sport, both from an analytical perspective and a play calling perspective than they did 5 years ago. So I just like that constant growth. I'm lucky too at ESPN to like have access now to so much more data than I did at the beginning of my
Right.
career, and that in itself is also changing. We're constantly getting new stuff. So yeah, it's a learning. It's a constant state of learning is how I would describe it.
Do you feel like, though, are there instances for yourself personally where you have the data, you see the numbers, but you think the eye test overrules what the data shows?
Um, I think that numbers are just information, right? So most of the time when people think about analytics in football, they exclusively think about fourth down, going for it on fourth down,
Yeah,
or
right.
maybe 2 point strategy.
Yep.
But it's so much more than that. I mean, for example, I guess just to give you a little insight into what my week is like, a lot of what I do during the week is like matchup reports. And I'm saying, well, how do they do against these personnel groupings? How do they match it with what kind of plays, what kind of run plays are they going to out of these formations, whatever. That's analytics. And then that's looking at the plays and looking at the players and thinking, well, okay, what's going to happen this week, right? Like, so all you're doing is just it's the same thing that's been happening in football forever, which is just bringing as much pieces of information you can to the table when you analyze a matchup. And this is what NFL teams do. They go into every week with just packets and packets of plays and data and information, and then they try to put their team in the best position to win. And so I think for me and for my teammates in NFL Live, it's just all about, hey, okay, here's the data, here's the information. Cool. What do we think?
Right.
Here are the players. What should they do? What do they do wrong? And I think that's how we approach it.
Do you get a lot of people in your life, like maybe friends or family, who, because you do the numbers so much, they're looking to you for gambling advice? Because gamblers love trends. I don't. As a gambler, I hate trends actually, but most gamblers love trends. I would like. Do you have friends texting you like, "Oh, what's going on in this game? Is there something you can tell me?"
Most people know not to ask me because I don't like being asked for that kind of advice. To be honest,
Right.
it just makes it stressful for me because I want to be able to watch the game without rooting for an outcome. So,
Right.
and then if
Right.
I have a friend who's like, "Hey, what should I do?" Then I'm nervous watching the game because I want it
Right.
to work out. I get asked for
Right.
fantasy advice a lot. I'm not a fantasy expert. I obviously
Right.
play fantasy football. And then just straight up picks. I'll be asked for straight up picks.
Right. Right. Everyone's in a pool of some sort. It seems
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
Um, you mentioned about like your week. What I really would love to know is, what is your NFL Sunday like? Um,
yeah.
is it, I had Dan Orlovsky on about a month ago. I asked him that question, and the way he told me he does the tape was interesting. And he's like not watching the 4 o'clock games because he's watching the 1 o'clock games, which you
Yeah.
think is like, so it's fascinating. I'm curious what your NFL Sunday from 1 p.m. Eastern till basically midnight is like.
Yeah, I'm usually watching the games with an eye towards what we're going to be talking about on Monday, and usually have a good sense of that going into the week. We kind of know, like for example, Rams Eagles this weekend. We know
Right.
we're going to talk about that on Monday, so I try to watch the big ones live. I'm usually watching two at a time in each window, and then I'll catch up on one during the night game so that I can get through at least six and feel good, like a good handle on them. before we get to tape on Monday morning, and then you start to get through more of them then. Um, and yeah, so we were on NFL Live. We have a group chat too going all day with the producer of our show, Mark Eisman, where we talk about kind of this, like, okay, it feels like we're going to talk about this game. All right, it feels like we're going to talk about this. So my goal is to just not have to play too much catch up on Sunday night and Monday morning before NFL Live.
Right. And when you're watching the games, what are you taking notes? Are
Yeah.
you looking at, what the offensive lines are doing? While you, what's the sort of
Yeah,
method to the madness?
I'm taking notes on tendencies, trends, things that they're doing well, plays that I want to go back to. I'll have NGS has in real time, they're updating data on what's happening on the field. Oh, they're leaning on this grouping, or oh, the quarterback's throwing the ball this fast, or this is the coverages they're facing. So I'm monitoring that in real time as it's going, and just kind of keeping a running tablet. I'm marking the times and whatnot of just things that I'm noticing that might make for interesting talking points the next day.
It's interesting. You guys who do like the tape and the film, it's such an interesting way to watch games. That everyone sort of has their own way, so I'm fascinated by that. Is I know you've done Rams preseason games. Would being in the booth as an analyst be the ultimate gig, or you're happy doing studio and that's not a career goal? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I love doing the studio shows, and I'm
Yeah.
so like such an amateur at the game calling. I think it's a really fun experience. They're a fantastic team to work for, by the way, and I love just doing something different and learning something new. But I am not as like that. When I see what like Dan does, or some of the other guys I work with, they're so good at it. It's so beyond the scope of my abilities, and I love studio. Like, I love the team aspect of it. I think we get to have fun in a way that is different from calling games. So I'm pretty happy with being on a studio show.
Interesting. Does it bother you at all that there's never been a woman as an analyst doing games? I mean, they're all over in studio and obviously sidelines, but it does seem like that's like, I don't want to say the
Well,
last, because
I
there's
would,
other. Go ahead.
yeah, I would object to the idea that they're all over elsewhere, right? Like, I don't
Well,
think there are that
I
many
what I mean by
studio
that is, I
shows.
mean the jobs they have are elsewhere. We
Yeah,
see women on the sidelines. We see women in studio. We've never seen
barely.
one, barely, and we've seen a couple do play by play. Beth Mowens, um, Pam Ward, but
Yeah.
there's still the analyst in the booth for a game has not been that. That's a hurdle that has not been climbed yet.
Yeah,
That's
it's
not the
true to
woman's fault. It's the people who hire. But how frustrating is it when you
Oh,
see that?
I think that it would be great to see more women giving opinions about football in any context, to be honest. Yeah, like I don't think that in studio, sitting at a desk, giving thought, like, break takes, forget being in a booth. There's just not that many, and it's kind of a pipeline thing for me. Like, when we talk about, okay, well, why is that? Well, it's obviously, for those of us who don't grow up playing, and there are women who play flag now. That's a major pipeline of opinionators. But I think you also need more women to, like, or lower, like, podcasting, blogging, doing radio, and that's the kind of pipeline you need to build for more women in studio shows like me.
Yeah. I did a mailbag about a month ago, and someone asked, "Do I think will ever see a woman analyst in the booth?" And like I was like, I hate to say this, but I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime, just because these networks, they're afraid of doing that. I think, and it's also like someone's got to be the first, and no one really wants to be the first. It would seem, but if and I hate the theory again. I don't want I know Ryan Clark is a teammate of yours, so I'm not trying to bring that into it. But I do hate the theory that someone has to play to analyze a game. You
Uh,
don't have
I'll
to
tell you, I'll
play
tell you
to
who
tell
doesn't.
you what's going on.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll
No,
tell
no,
you
no.
who
Go ahead.
doesn't think that, Ryan Clark, because
Mm,
he has been probably one of my biggest advocates since I started doing this job. And people always ask me, like, what is it hard, because of your gender or whatever? And I say, yeah, maybe with like fans, right? But
right.
so much of my career I attribute to especially the main guys on NFL Live that I work with, because um they have done such a fantastic job, not just behind the scenes. We have so many conversations about football. I can send them clips and they can answer questions, but on camera too. If you ever watch our show, like they sell me, frankly, to our viewers in a way that I believe has been instrumental in
Yeah.
me like kind of doing the job I do.
Football is back, and Underdog is the best place to make picks and win money all season long. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. This week, I'm going to lock in on the Rams at Eagles game. The Rams played in Tennessee last Sunday. They're in Philly this Sunday. I think West Coast team with that travel could be in for a little bit of a rough day defensively. So I'm going to go higher on a lot of the Eagles categories. I'm going to go higher on Jalen Hurts rushing yards. I'm going to go higher on A.J. Brown receiving yards. I think the Eagles want to get A.J. Brown going. So that's where I'm going this Sunday for my Underdog picks. Download the app today and sign up with promo code Sports Illustrated to score $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5. That's promo code Sports Illustrated. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will you be next? Underdog. Make picks. Win money.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
You said maybe with the fans, the fact that you didn't play is still a thing. When did you have a point or a moment when you felt like you have become respected as an NFL analyst? I feel like you can tell me if I'm wrong. I feel like in the business, in our industry, I feel like you're respected. You said it's the fans, but did you feel like, how was that struggle to where you finally said, okay, I think people now at least respect what I do, my opinions, see how hard I work, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I'm viewed like broadly, but I'll say to answer your question, for me, a real, I wouldn't say wake up call, but I was able to get a sense of like, okay, maybe I'm okay at this, and maybe I have earned the respect of people whose respect matters to me. Going to the NFL Combine every year, so every March, some of us go, and that's where all the coaches and executives go. And just when I started going to that, just having coaches come up and start conversations with me about football
Yeah.
and like, hey, I saw you said this, and like, wow, that was such a wake, because you don't really think about who's watching and who's listening. And I'm not a reporter, so I'm not trying to get stuff out of, you know what I mean? Like I don't have like those relationships aren't fundamental at all to job I do.
Right.
But I think the first time I started going to that, it's been years now, and then just continually, that to me has been every year. That's like a reminder. Oh, right. The people who do this for a living are the ones that you should be listening to. And they seem to think I'm doing okay.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's also, I think, and I think anyone in our business has to deal with this. Obviously, it's going to be way, way, way worse for a woman in our business. But at some point, you just have to not either look at social media, take it seriously. You have to mentally put it in a compartment or something like that. Easy for me to say because I probably don't get nearly, what you would get. But, I wish I could just have everyone in our business be like, don't pay attention to it. I wish everyone in our business would, not. But it's also, I mean, I see you have almost 1 million followers. How can you not? It's a tool. It's there. So it's got to be tough.
I miss being able to like engage and like look more though, because
Yeah,
your
I
advice
do
is
too.
correct.
I
Yeah,
do too.
right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think Nick Wright, who's a friend of mine, even though we pretend like we're rivals on the internet, once texted me, I think it was a couple years ago, and I was getting it pretty bad, and I get the DEI stuff nonstop. And he was like, Mina, like social media is not social anymore. Put your stuff out there, walk away. And think about that social media not being social all the time now. Because he's right. And it's not that normal people don't exist. They do exist. They're the mass majority, but voices are just being drowned out now on all these platforms, sometimes algorithmically. And so you just have to realize you're over indexing on people who don't actually represent your fan base or your listeners.
Right. Yeah. you said it so well by saying, you know, you missed the engagement because at a time it was fun to engage with people who are consuming your work. And I also just I missed the fact that it used to be fun. I mean,
Yeah.
no one would ever think it's fun now, but you know, in the past, like you could throw out an opinion on pizza and people wouldn't look at it like you like somehow if you said something about pizza now, it would be a political statement. Like they would somehow pizza
Right.
would become like
I
liberal
know.
or conservative. Like it's insane what's happened. And
Yeah.
you know, for those of us who've been on it for a long time, like it was fun for a long period of time, and then now it's you hit that send button and you're like, God only knows what I'm going to get in response to this.
Yeah, and I think it's also questionable how useful it is from a career standpoint in terms of actually
Yeah.
driving people to the stuff we make and do.
Right.
I
Right.
I question that. So I question my own, I think it's a
Yeah.
networking tool and everyone in our industry is on these platforms and that's a big
Yeah.
part of why we still do it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I from a mental health perspective, I think it's really important to compartmentalize, as you said.
Yeah, and I don't mean this in a judgmental way at all. It's going to sound that way, but I do. I'm surprised how many people in our business still can't or don't
Yeah.
compartmentalize it because, you know, I have friends who you know, I'll have a friend say, this came up actually a couple weeks ago. I sent something, I forgot what it even was, and someone sent a nasty reply. It was about, I was complaining about FanDuel or something. And someone was like, you know, you could use DraftKings, you idiot, or something like that. And I didn't respond because what was be the point? But like one of my friends saw it and was like, how do you deal with this? Now, this is someone who's not in
Yeah,
sports media.
I
So that's
know.
what we also like, you especially, like, we're so used to that. We don't even like compute that response in our brain. But like my friend who's not in sports media, not in sport, you know, he sees that. He's like, how do you deal with that? I'm like, that one doesn't even like phase me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's okay to admit that you're bothered by it too. I think we valorize like, oh, you like shouldn't they're not real and
Yeah.
it shouldn't matter if, a bazillion call people are calling you DEI all day, toughen up, whatever. I think it's okay to admit that it is
Yeah.
like I think it was Taylor Swift who she was interviewed about it and talked about like letting people put that poison in your brain or something. Or it was in the interview she did with
Yeah.
Travis Kelsey, and I thought like, yeah, you really have to acknowledge that it sucks and it bothers you, and you have to be very deliberate about what you take in.
I would also imagine, I mean, you tell me. So like if you're getting comments all day long from people, DEI, DEI,
Yeah.
um, I would imagine if it's in abundance like that, at some point it doesn't even phase you because it's not you can't take that as like a serious criticism.
Well, there are people who almost overwhelmingly don't actually consume the things I do,
Right.
right? So, and you got to remember that, right? So, um, the old adage, don't take criticism from anyone you don't take advice for. I would go that further and say, don't take criticism from anyone who's not actually watching the things you say. Like,
Right.
and like there is legitimate criticism to be had. Like sometimes someone say, "Hey, you were hard on the Chargers defense. Look at them now," and I'm like, "You sir are correct. I have to
Right.
take this L because you
Right.
watched what I said and I was dead as wrong. And if you want to call me a dummy, you know what? Points are made."
Right.
But I think
And that's
most
always going to
don't
happen in
recognize it. Yeah,
sports
yeah,
when you
yeah.
do
Well,
it because
absolutely.
you have opinions on players and teams. So
Yeah.
that's what it's become. It's become more of like, all right, let me see what Mina said about my team. I'll keep it in my back pocket. And then 4 weeks from now, if it goes the other way, I can say, oh,
Yeah.
you're an idiot. Look what you did. That's
And
what it's become more than anything.
that's fine. Like
Yeah.
I always say like, hey, if you want to take quibble with something I've actually said or done,
Yeah.
sure, I'll I'll
Yeah.
I'll engage. That's fine.
But again, like I said, obviously the respect of your peers is there. I know that a few years ago when the Manning cast started, they tried out two people as potential hosts, you and Kyle Brandt. Yeah, and it was funny because I know when Kyle auditioned, he had said to me like, "There's no way they're gonna have a host. They don't need a host."
Yeah.
I was that your take as
That was my
well?
takeaway as well. These people do not need a
Yeah,
host.
which we've seen proven out. But do you ever think about what it would have been like if they needed a host and you got that gig, given how that's become this popular cult thing?
No, I am
Yeah,
not a host, and I say that as someone who has the utmost respect for hosting and what it entails. I mean, I get the incomparable blessing of working with the best host in our business, Laura Rutledge, and who's like basically also a producer, and she's got people in her ear, and she's unbelievable at her job. And I do my job, and it's very different from that. And I think that's okay.
So when you auditioned, you had a feeling it would be a smash hit, the Manicast?
Yeah, but I could have told me that before, because I've heard those guys talk about football. And I mean,
Yeah.
Peyton Manning too is like one of those, he's so, what's the word I'm looking for? Detail oriented. That like, I can't imagine him doing anything that's not successful, because he cares so much about
Yeah.
every tiny detail. And obviously that was how he played football too.
But it had to be flattering that you were even asked to try out, I would assume.
Yeah, I don't think it was really like, I think it was more just like, hey, let's see how this works with hosts. Do you have time to do it? I don't think it was like a
You did.
serious, yeah. But the cool thing is now they produce my podcast, and they're amazing partners. I love that company.
I was just going to say what they've done with Omaha is so
Yeah.
I didn't realize your podcast was is that,
Yeah.
I don't know if you don't have to answer this if you don't want, but I'm just curious. When someone works at ESPN, I know ESPN is sort of partners with Omaha, but it's like, why isn't it an ESPN podcast? Why is it an Omaha podcast?
I think it's just kind of like at the time, a manpower thing, and they've got the
Yeah.
resources to do this, and we've got the partnership, and we want to be mutually successful. I'd met Jamie Horowitz a few times, and he'd expressed being a fan of my work. And yeah, it's been great. I mean, it's been a wonderful experience. And also, we've really prioritized like growing it on YouTube as well, which is kind of where things are going with podcasts. And
Yep.
yeah, I've been doing my podcast now since 2018, so it's been a long time. And it is probably, it's not my favorite thing I do. NFL Live is my favorite thing I do, but
Yeah.
I think my podcast listeners are my favorite people that I interact with.
That's so funny because I say that too all the time. Like I write a column 5 days a week. I've been doing that for like 20, no, not 20, but like 15 years. And no, more than 15, almost 20. But the podcast listeners are never mean. They're always nice. They're
But this
always
is what I was
supportive.
saying. They're actually listening to what you do.
Right.
And
Right.
most people who are actually listening to what you do, even if they disagree with you,
Yeah.
are going to actually be substantive in their criticism or respectful. I think that's
you hit that nail right on that. Sometimes I'm like I'm uncomfortable how nice the podcast is. I'm like, all right, I'm glad you like. I'm not that good. Like they're really super supportive and super nice. So
That's
it's interesting. Yeah, you have that same experience. You've mentioned NFL Live a few times, and I've had Dan Orlovsky on the pod a couple of times. I've gotten to know him, through these jobs and text here and there, and tell the listeners, is he as big a weirdo as we think? I think the answer is yes, and I love it.
In some ways, yes, because everything you see, all the weird stuff is absolutely authentic. It is not a bit.
Yes.
The diet
Yes.
stuff, the some of the, quirks that he has. But I also think something that maybe, I hope it comes across on air, but maybe it doesn't. He's just been such an incredible supporter of mine. I've mentioned this before, but Dan and I became friendly before they rebooted NFL Live. I don't even remember who introduced us, but I had him on my podcast, and I think we recognized each other. Oh, you're a freaking dork. I'm a freaking dork about football. Let's just dork out together, and we text each other. You notice this, you notice this. So then when they rebooted the show, we were able to, I think, kind of work off of that pre-existing relationship. And yeah, that continues to this day. I mean, I had him on my podcast this summer, and we just geeked out about nerd stuff for like 45 minutes. And I was just like, man, we've been doing this for a long time, dude.
Right.
And he is like me in that we still get so geeked out on, oh my gosh, did you notice? Like last year it was quads. This year it's like, oh, we're noticing this defensively. Like we just get geeked out on it. It's just, he's very, very fun to work with.
And I love him for the food stuff. You were the one that outed him on the Reese's Pieces, right? Peanut butter cup, his ridiculous way of eating.
I don't know if that was the one. I remember I posted, we were at an event, and he dug out all the fruit out of these like pastries. I think that was at the Combine or the Pro Bowl maybe, and that was honestly one of the most appalling things I've ever seen. But
that would check out, because when I had him on last month, I asked him, I said, can you power rank for me pancakes, waffles, and French toast? And he said he doesn't like any of those three and he'd rather have fruit and yogurt.
He I don't know. He eats like a child, but then also sometimes he's very healthy. I can't yeah, I don't know. I can't condone it.
You've mentioned how much you love doing NFL live. Obviously, the castmates, I'm sure, is the majority of that. What is it? What else is it about that show that you love so much?
It's a very unique show in a number of ways. One of which is, and this is a credit to our producers, and it's been this way for several years. A lot of the vast majority of what we talk about, but a lot of what we talk about is generated from the discussions we have, the talent, our texts, and our interests. And that is pretty unique, I think, right? It's not somebody coming over the top and saying, Cowboys, whatever. It's like, no, hey, we want to talk about this. Hey, I noticed this. Dan saying, hey, I have these clips, got this discussion. So I think that makes it pretty special. I think the producers are fantastic. Lydell King, Mark Eisman, Susan Smith's been with us since the beginning. They work so hard at making sure we're not doing the same topics that other shows are doing. We also, I think, really our show is really driven by like how and not just yes and no questions. Or are they under pressure? Should he be fired? It's like, how are they struggling? Why are they struggling? I think we really try to teach, and we teach each other. And I think that's the other thing. A lot of what we do on air is just conversations. It's a lot of people listening and asking questions. And I think that's pretty cool because it's probably something should be happening more in sports television.
Yeah. It's, there's so much complaining. And I do it too. I do it a lot, but about sort of like the hot take culture. But there are plenty of shows out there, if you look and you dig, that are doing the opposite of that. So, more shows like yours obviously could appeal to more people, and hopefully networks realize that. When you watch the games, because for the purpose of this podcast, my column, I cover the announcers. You don't have to name them, but do you have favorites, and do you have ones that you do not enjoy listening to?
Definitely not going to answer that one.
Well, that's a yes or no. I didn't ask for names.
Football's pretty blessed, like we I feel like football mostly is pretty dang good, to be honest. Probably just because it's like the standard is so high. I would say, a Monday night, I think they're the gold standard. Joe and Troy, I think they're just unbelievable. But I think Chris is great on Sundays with Mike. And then I think this is a pretty common answer. I think Greg Olson does a hell of a job. I think I should also mention Dan, who's amazing, my guy. But one thing I like about Greg a lot, and I've said this to him before, is I think he thinks about football in a really modern way, and the way he talks about a lot of the, especially the analytical stuff, quite frankly, but strategy, Dan, I would put in this bucket as well. It really reflects how coaches think about it right now. I've said this before publicly, but coaches and teams are so far ahead of football media generally when it comes to modern football thinking. And I think the really good announcers kind of keep up with that.
Yes, for sure. I think, I also think it's the way you sell it. Like Greg sells it in such a natural, I'm not talking down to you kind of way. He does have that sort of kind of every person type of feel to him, and not I am the almighty football person and I'm going to explain it to you peons.
Yeah, no, 100%. I would also ride for my guy Adam Amin, who does play-by-play. He's awesome. He is also probably one of the most well-liked people in our industry. I'm sure you've heard that from conversations. He's just a doll.
Everybody knows there are things they can do to reduce monthly costs and improve their finances. But who has time to go through all of their expenses and decide what to trim? With Rocket Money crunching the numbers for you, leveling up your money game gets way easier. Listen, I talk about these streaming services all the time and how sports has gone to streaming in a massive way. All of us at one time or another have signed up for a streaming service to watch one game. Then what happens? We forget to cancel it. it becomes a monthly bill. Rocket Money can take care of all of that for you. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money shows you all of your expenses in one place, including subscriptions you forgot about. If you see a subscription you no longer want, Rocket Money will help you cancel it. Rocket Money's 5 million members have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscription, with members saving up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/SI Media today. That's rocketmoney.com/SI Media. rocketmoney.com/SI Media. Let's get into some NFL topics here. And I'm
Okay.
curious because you could obviously bring a whole other angle to it. So for me, well, forget me. Let's go to you. Give me what you think is the biggest theme development storyline in only the first 2 weeks of the season.
Oh, I mean, Chiefs starting 0-2 is a pretty big story, I feel like.
I had that on my list. And
Yeah.
what's interesting is they play the Giants this week. If they ever lost that game, week 4 they play the Ravens. Could you imagine
Oh, but
KC
yeah,
0
I don't think they're
4?
gonna lose to the Giants, but,
Right, I don't either. Yeah.
yeah, no, it just feels bad watching them too. It's not just that it's like it's not like they're losing like the Ravens did to the Bills week 1, right? Whereas it
Right.
was just like, "Oh god, that sucked," but we still think the Ravens are awesome. They don't look great. The offense has like a lot of the same problems last year, but
Yeah.
then you're also seeing lack of a pass rush and some communication issues in the back end of the defense. I still think they're a playoff team. I think they'll get it together. I think getting the receivers back will be huge, but you definitely watch them and you feel like the Ravens and the Bills are a cut above in the AFC, and that's a
And maybe
different
the
feeling.
Chargers. And maybe the Chargers now.
Maybe the Chargers. Maybe the
Yeah.
Chargers.
Yeah.
I think that when the Chiefs get the receivers back, they'll be able to compete with LA.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, they've had no weapons these first 2 weeks. And I don't think uh, I'd be careful if anyone's out there thinking like Mahomes has slipped at all. He hasn't slipped at all. He
It's
has
not his
no
fault.
help.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not his fault. Yeah.
No help. I'll give you, for me, and maybe this is the gambler in me, but it is, you talked about trends, so maybe you can weigh in on this. I'm fascinated by, like in week 2, we saw just a ridiculous amount of scoring. And what I noticed in these games is because of the new dynamic kickoff, no teams anymore are starting drives at the 20. Everyone's starting
Yeah.
drives at the 35, 40-yard line. Now you combine that with the change in the balls they use to kick the field goals, and the field goal kickers now somehow basically
Booming it.
being superhuman.
Yeah.
And it's not that difficult to score points right now because of the way the game is set up. Has that been something on your radar?
Yeah, we kind of wait a few weeks to see sort of drive position and scoring data and see what that's saying. But the NFL is getting what they wanted with the dynamic kickoff, and it isn't it fascinating. I was just podcasting with Bill Simmons. We were talking about this. Isn't it fascinating how just 5 yards changes everything, right?
It
Like because
it really
yeah,
does.
like I
It
do the
really
Rams
does.
preseason, and Sean McVay was like, "Boot it! Like I don't care, start him at the 30, the 35." You're like,
Right.
"Oh, let's put that
Right.
ball in play." And I think Sam Schwartzstein, who's the guy who created the dynamic kickoff, and he works for Prime, has just been so on the cutting edge of all of this. But he like he told me this offseason, yeah, this is going to be a big change, and it absolutely has been. I, I think it's good for the sport. I think that I actually I mentioned this Bill too. I think like long field goals are actually really dramatic and fun.
I agree.
So
I
I don't
agree.
think I think from an entertainment standpoint, it's as good as it's ever been.
I agree with that. Excuse me. I agree. I just think I wonder if we're going to get to a point where we're going to want it to be a little more challenging to score points, because like if you are starting every drive at the 35-40, and these kickers now, like a 60-yarder is no big thing at all.
Yeah.
You might want it to be a little bit more of a challenge, but we'll see how that
We'll see
plays
what the
out.
data says. Yeah, with the points.
How excited were you on Sunday when the Seahawks went into Pittsburgh and won that game?
Yeah, I thought they would. I think the Steelers' defense has kind of been one of the stories of the season of how bad they've looked through the first 2 weeks. That's been kind of shocking. I think the Seahawks defense, conversely, is one of the best in the NFL, which was they were one of the best in the second half of last year, so that's continued. The NFC West is a really fun division generally because every team feels kind of clustered at the moment. We'll see. I think if the Rams beat the Eagles, you can kind of pull them away a bit. But yeah, it's a fun year. I think they're an interesting team. They're kind of hard to get your arms around. The offense is still a little bit up and down, but that defense in Seattle is something that
Yeah.
people should be paying attention to.
I thought I'd be curious what you've seen on this in terms of Aaron Rodgers, because I thought he got so much praise in week 1 when they beat the Jets because he threw 4 touchdown passes. If you watch that game,
Yeah.
his receivers were wide open on almost every single pass play. He
Yeah.
was not throwing into tight windows. He had receivers open all day. The Jet defense has been pathetic 2 weeks in a row. He can't move. So, I mean, I would be stunned if he makes it the whole season. Like he cannot move. So I was on Seattle too on Sunday. I was not surprised by that
Yeah.
because I think people just saw 4 touchdown passes against the Jets and was like, oh, Aaron Rodgers, he's back. There's no problems. But
Yeah, week
I don't
one's a
know.
liar, right? It's one of those things where, oh, right, maybe the
Yep.
Jets defense just sucks, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, no, I think you're onto something there. I think Rodgers, like, you'll still have flashes of the old arm talent. You even saw against the Seahawks, he'll make like 5 throws that are crazy game.
Right.
But it's a lot of quick game. That was the chase against the Jets as well. Anything over 2.5 seconds, things kind of get a little bit froggy for him. And so if you're playing a
Yeah.
defense that can really take that away and also get pressure, it's not going to look good. I think the Steelers have to run the ball better than they have for this to be sustainable. And
Yeah.
we'll see if that can improve.
I miss the days of teams running the ball. Like it just, the whole game has changed, but I remember the
There's still
days
a
of
lot.
like, but it's not, I don't know. I always reminisce about the 80s and
Philly,
90s
the
with the big shoulder
Ravens,
pads and
Bills. These are all teams that
yeah.
pound.
Yeah.
You like big shoulder pads. The Seahawks are using a fullback this year.
Give me fullbacks. Give me fullbacks running a wheel route and I'm happy. Or
There's some
route.
of that around the league.
Yeah.
The good teams are all pretty good at running the ball right now.
Yeah. Well, there's something to that for sure. I feel like it's such a played out topic, but I feel like how do we not discuss it? Because it sort of thrust back into the spotlight on Sunday with the tush push, whatever it's called. Where do you stand on it?
I mean, I feel like no one has a leg to stand on because they voted against it. So I guess I'll start in terms of like the teams, right? Like you don't get to complain about it now, y'all. I mean, there's like kind of a theme, right? And more than football.
That's true.
I think that the false start aspect of it is the thing that people are maybe correctly a little bit, their hackles are up. And I think it's something I suspect that the NFL is going to be keeping an eye on. If that, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few flags fly in that regard to just kind of hold the Eagles in check a bit. But the actual tush push is like, yeah, y'all
right.
This. Stop.
Well, it was like a combination of false starts and offside. It seemed like everything was a mess on it. And I've always sort of been neutral on it. I'm like, okay, they keep it fine. They can't. It didn't really get me all worked up, but I didn't like if they would have outlawed it, I wouldn't have cared. But and I had money on the Eagles Sunday. I was like, this is a little much. I mean, they're like 5 linemen are lined up ahead of the ball. Like how are the refs not seeing that? Are they terrified to call a penalty? Like, I don't know what's going on. Not a good look for the league.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I think they're gonna probably do something. I don't know.
But they'd have to wait till probably after the season, I guess.
Oh, I meant like they might call them. I think the refs will go into these next few games because like they're going to be watching it like hard.
You think Roger sent a memo this week? And
because there was the whole, there was just so much conversation about it on the internet.
Yeah,
they're pretty responsive to stuff like that.
A completely absurd question to ask you going into week 3, but who do you think will be in the Super Bowl this year?
Well, my preseason pick was Ravens Packers.
Looks good.
Still feel pretty good about that. Obviously the Bills beat them. The Bills look great. I view the Bills and the Ravens as basically equal. I
Yeah.
think the Ravens defense, however, is going to look a lot better in the end of the season than they do right now. So I might be comfortable sticking with that pick.
I'm curious, like you had mentioned earlier about like when I asked you about people asking you for advice and you said you don't want to have rooting interest. But I do feel like with what we do, there's obviously players we like. And like I know for me, like I don't have a team I root for. I used to be a Jet fan when I was a kid, but once Bill Parcells left, my Jet fandom ended and I just root for whoever I bet. But I also root for like players I like personality wise, teams. So like for me personally, if you said to me, what do you want to see more than anything in the NFL right now? I would say Josh Allen winning a Super Bowl. Can you feel that way or do you try to be more objective?
I generally root for the most fun and interesting outcomes, the best football. But I would be lying if I said I don't also root for myself to be right. So yeah, I want the
Yeah,
Packers and the
yeah.
Ravens to play in the Super Bowl so that at the end of the
100%.
year I can say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I called it." Not that that was like
Right.
some brave stance or anything.
Right.
So for me, it's because I don't really, I'm not a reporter, so it's not like I have like
Right.
relationships or whatever that I'm rooting for. I just am rooting for, yeah, like my own analysis.
Listen, because when you're not right, you're going to get shit for it. So you might as well root for yourself to be right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Um. So I'm curious too. Your Monday through Sunday, you seem like it seems like there are so many people in this business that have so many jobs. Um. And I know you also have a child. Does it ever get overwhelming during the season, or you've got a good grip on everything? Because NFL Live is every day. You mentioned the podcast. I know you do a lot of interviews. Obviously, you got to watch the games, and you got to watch them closer than the average person. Are there any points? I've talked about this, I think, too, with Kyle Brandt too. Like you get to a point in the season, you're like, oh my god, I'm overwhelmed. Like maybe like week 10, but like how is it for you? Because you're obviously knee deep in all of this.
The early part of the week is a lot for me. I'm pretty up against it. Mostly not just because of my taping schedule, but because as you alluded to, I'm like trying to get through these games and trying to do my prep. But I also the my TV schedule is that I'm on NFL Live on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. I tape my own podcast on Wednesdays. Thursdays I have First Take, Sports Center throughout the week. It's pretty front loaded, I would say. I also tape my podcast on Tuesday. So that part of the week is busy, especially when I'm traveling because you're trying to find time, but you're also traveling. I'm very blessed to have childcare at home to help me out in that regard. But it's a lot early in the week during the season, and then it kind of
Yeah.
the cadence of it is that it kind of calms down as the week ends, and then it starts right back up again.
Do you get to relax on a Saturday?
Unless I'm traveling. But
Okay.
Saturdays too are really like I try to lock in and spend time with my kid. So,
Yeah.
anyone who has a young kid knows that like your days off aren't really your days off anymore.
Right. Absolutely.
I'm actually more tired at the end of a Saturday because of my 2-year-old than I am
Yeah.
covering football.
Well, yes, 2 years old for sure. That would make you more tired than watching football. Well, I appreciate you giving me the time. I enjoyed this a lot, and I hope all of your predictions are right, and you can take the victory lap. Because really, what else is there at this? That's what this is all about. Got to be right.
Being
in this
right.
business.
No.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for
admitting
coming
when
on.
you're
Mina.
wrong. Also admitting when you're wrong.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think those are the people that fans usually enjoy the most. Is the people who can say, "Okay, that was on me.
Yeah.
my bad." So, thanks, Mina. Really appreciate it. Be
I
well.
appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.